Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and get started. Happy Thursday, everybody, and welcome to our salt and freshwater invasive species prevention workshop. Happy Thursday to all of you, and I want to introduce our team. First, I'm the Environmental Boating Program Manager for both the California State Parks and the California Coastal Commission, and my name is Vivian Matuk, and considering our agenda, I'm going to let first Cesar and then Jonathan and then Catherine introduce themselves. So go ahead, Cesar, please.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Cesar Blanco. I'm with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service here in Sacramento, and I manage the Aquatic Invasive Species Program for the service. Thanks. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Cesar. Jonathan?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jonathan Thompson, and I'm a senior environmental scientist with the California State Lands Commission's Marine Invasive Species Program.
Thank you, Jonathan. Catherine?
Good morning, everybody. I'm Catherine Mandela with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, and I am the environmental scientist, aquatic invasive species specialist for the Bay Delta region. So basically, I cover everything between Sonoma and Santa Cruz and everything west of Sacramento and Stockton.
Thank you, Catherine. That's great. So a couple of ground meeting rules. I'm going to make sure everybody is muted just to avoid the background noise that sometimes Zoom or this type of platforms create. I'm also going to ask everybody to please ask the questions during the allocated time that we have set up. So we allow the workshop to have a smooth flow. But of course, as you saw in the agenda and as we clearly stated there, you have plenty of opportunity to ask questions or make any comments. And when you speak, please feel free to say your name and identify if you're affiliated to a marina organization or you're just simply a boater or member of the public. Make sure that we ask questions respectfully, and also your comments are we are adults, so I probably don't have to say this, but it's better just to set up properly the rules. And let's exercise respectful listening. And I want to invite all of you to exercise something that I'm doing on my daily basis. And is if we're here and you sign to be here, please make sure to avoid distraction. Make sure you're here in this space devoted to learn and get some information that you can utilize in the field. So in other words, I hope you're present so you take advantage of this workshop. I want to invite everybody, if you can turn on your cameras, if it's possible, and if your internet and computer allows you to do that. The reason why is just to make sure that we can feel like we are in a classroom set, or just to make sure that you are present, or if, I can check also if you need anything from us. And of course, you will know if your camera is on as long as you don't have in the icon, the line or the cross line, and make sure you are muted. To unmute yourself, just click on top of the microphone so we can let you ask any questions. Again, just ask questions during the time allocated for that purpose. And also, please make sure that you try to avoid using the chat while we are presenting, so that avoids people, tendency to go and check the chat rather than getting distractions. So who is here today? In our registration, I ask you for your affiliation and also for your county. So I wanted to show you the fantastic group we have here today. We have representations from boaters and boating associations, Coast Guard Auxiliary, Marina, harbors, also yacht clubs, conservation corps, general public, federal, state, and local agencies, fishing organization, conservation districts, general public, marine patrol, Board of Supervisors, some of our partner dog walkers, Sea Scouts, so great group. And on the left, you will see the participation of all the counties that are here with us today, which is a fantastic representation from our beautiful state. Again, in the chat, and one more time, I'm going to include the link to the handout we will be using today, so you should be finding two of them. After I'm done with reviewing the agenda and the plan we have created for you today, we're going to start from a bird's eye view perspective and talk about the regional invasive species issues, why we should care, cost, operational impacts, and potential problems. Then we allocated time for you guys to ask questions. And after that, we're going to jump into the marine invasive species world. We're going to be talking about some causes, case studies, and what you can do in your own area. Again, we're going to be covering everything you saw in the emails that you received. So we're sticking to that. So that's what we're covering. Then we'll have a question section, and then we're going to have a 10-minute break. Then we're going to focus our attention on freshwater organisms, invasive organisms, specifically golden quagga and zebra mussels. So we're going to start from the vector that brought specifically the golden mussel to our state. And then Catherine Mandela will be talking in particular about quagga, zebra and golden mussels, what the state has been doing, and resources and best management practices you can implement. After that, we're going to have the questions, and I'm going to be asking every single participant to please fill out an evaluation form that would only take a couple of minutes of your time. So I hope that today you do that. All right, so let's start with switching gears to Caesar. So I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'm going to launch a poll that we have created for you. So bear with me for a sec. I'm just multitasking here. So, okay. So we are going to ask everybody to participate. We're trying just to make this workshop very educational. So I'm going to launch a poll right now that you should see in your screen. And I'm going to give you 1 minute for you to please participate in this poll. If you don't know, make sure that you exercise your most educated guess. And then what we will do is Cesar will take over, and he will be walking us through this information. So I would appreciate if everybody takes the opportunity to participate. That would be fantastic. Right now we have 60% participation, and I want us to go almost to probably 90%. For those of you who are new to the poll, you just need to simply respond to the response you think is the correct response, and we'll go from there. And I'll give you 4 more seconds here.
There's actually a typo there. It's not brilliant, but billion.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. All right. So I'm ending the poll right now, and I'm going to share here the results. So Cesar, please go ahead and respond.
Yeah, so the question was global annual estimated cost of invasive species is approximately how many dollars? And the correct answer, even though it was a typo, was C, $400 billion a year, which is pretty staggering cost of invasive species globally on an annual basis.
And thank you. I apologize for my, and let me see, I'm sharing here the results. So 59% got a B, and 31% got C, and the response should be C, as just Cesar mentioned, with the exception of my R that got there. I just got my new glasses, so probably that's why I needed them. All right. Okay, let me stop sharing here. And then we are going to move based on the agenda on the second item of your agenda, which is regional invasive species issues, cost, operational impacts, and potential problems. So Cesar, please go ahead and take it from here.
Yeah, give me a sec to share my screen.
No problem. Take your time.
Okay, do you see the screen or you see my notes page?
We see both your screen and the notes. So you have to go to the three dots that you find there and then just include just the view. The
The
yeah,
three dots.
the three
Right
dots
here?
below the map to your right. There's like a circle with three dots.
Mm. Oh, there we are. And then what do I say?
So then you click there and you have just to say something like presenter view or something like that.
Hmm. It doesn't have that. Hold on a sec. Hold on 1 second. How about there?
Perfect.
Okay. Yeah. So let me
You
go
just have to go
to
to the first slide.
first
Perfect.
slide. Yeah. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Cesar Blanco here. I'm with the Fish and Wildlife Service. I'm going to just give you a general overview of aquatic invasive species. Topics include what are invasive species. So I'll give a brief definition. I'll give you a sense of the costs associated with controlling invasive species, talk about pathways of establishment and how they spread and the vectors by which they spread. I'll give you some key examples of invasive species and the problems that they cause. And then drill down even further to talk about some current California coastal invaders of concern, and then talk about some tools that invasive species professionals use, and then how you can help the cause to prevent both the introduction and also the spread of invasive species that are currently here in California. So here's some invasive species traits. The definition of an invasive species is an organism that causes ecological or economic harm in a new environment where it is not native. Some traits that is universal to invasive species: they're fast growers, they are aggressive competitors, they reproduce rapidly and can disperse very quickly. Phenotypic is what they look like, and they have variations in what they can look like, and then the ecology, their adaptability is very plastic, or it's very adaptable. They are generalists in terms of what they feed on and what they attach to, etc. And the biggest thing is when they get here, they don't have a predator. So oftentimes they go and reproduce unchecked without any sort of predation pressure. So we're here in the San Francisco Bay and Bay Delta area. This is the most heavily invaded region in North America and hosts over 210 introduced aquatic species. For over 150 years, this region has been exposed to non-native species introductions through a whole host of mechanisms, including commercial shipping, aquaculture, bait industry, sport fishing, water diversions, and recreation. And I forgot to put in there intentional introductions for whatever reason, cultural reasons, what have you. And in the last decade, a new species has arrived to our shores about every 12 weeks. Not all of them established, but those that establish, create really big problems for us. Okay, so some of the costs every year. What you see here is just a graph of the different kinds of species that have associated damage costs. There are various noteworthy ones, such as mosquitoes, the brown rat, different types of, even cats can be considered invasive in habitats. And the key point here is that every year, non-native species in the U.S. has been increasing, and then collectively, these species have tremendous impacts on many things that we value. So the global total estimate is 1.4 trillion, but as my poll pointed out, it's over 400 billion annually globally. And I believe in the United States, it's over 400 million annually, the cost of invasive species. These are the pathways. How do they get here? And these are by no means all of the ways they get here. There's aquarium imports, aquaculture, commercial shipping, intentional introduction, live bait, live seafood, and aquascaping. With regards to the carp species, they were introduced in the U.S. in the 1970s to control algae and weeds and different non-desirable parasitic growth in fish farms, and they escaped the fish farms, and they're just all over the Midwest streams and rivers. Okay, so Jonathan will go into more detail about golden mussel, but just to give you a flavor of how it's suspected golden mussels got here is through commercial shipping. And so commercial ships take on and release ballast water. And so, they pick up water in one region, and then before they, as they arrive here, they release that water and take on local water to maintain their balance in the water column. And then, so that's one way that you can have invasive species introduced is through the ballast water. You can also have them introduced through biofouling, which is organisms attached to the ship hull. As you can see here in the bottom photo, there is a bunch of attached organisms. So in this example, the pathway is the international commercial shipping route, and the vector or vectors would be the hull, the ballast water tanks, the cargo, and any equipment on board that goes into the docks. They could bring in invasive species. Okay, so other pathways, how they spread once they're here: aquarium releases. That huge goldfish was caught in Lake Tahoe. So someone released their pet into Lake Tahoe, and it grew to that huge size before it was caught. Stowaways on commercial boats and also recreational boats can move the organism from, like, so for example, golden mussel. If there was a boat that was in the delta, attached golden mussels, if they're not taken off, can be spread to other lakes and reservoirs in California. Shipping crates, recreational activities, and infrastructure maintenance. If you have a contaminated backhoe and you take it from one lake to the other to do maintenance, you could have a potential to spread invasive species. And then, of course, field crews, if they don't clean their wet gear and such, they can spread invasive species. So anytime we move something from one water body to the next, we're creating a risk. And in many cases, the risk is easily identified and addressed. In other cases, it is much more difficult to track. So it's very important for us out there in the field to be mindful of the potential risks we're creating when we go and do monitoring, et cetera. Some examples of invasive plants in California: hydrilla, water primrose, curly leaf pondweed, alligator weed is a big one, and of course water hyacinth is a big one as well. And these plants outcompete young native plants for space and nutrients. They can develop. I'm sorry, did someone say something? Okay.
No.
So those are the notable aquatic plants. By no means those are all of the aquatic plants that are out there, but the problems that they cause, they can form dense mats because they reproduce asexually. They can form tubers or rhizomes, and they can, if you're in a situation where you're removing the plants, you have to make sure to get every single fragment, because a single fragment can turn into a fully adult plant and then reproduce from there. They're extremely fast growers, and they tolerate a wide range of water conditions. And as I pointed out, they are aggressive predators like any other invasive species. Some of the problems they cause: they interfere with water navigation. They can clog up whole waterways, which could result to local flooding in areas. They displace and reduce the diversity of aquatic plants, other native aquatic plants, and because they form such dense patches, they lower the abundance and diversity of the invertebrates, because a lot of these plants, have toxins or are very fibrous and hard to feed on by invertebrates. And most of them are a less valuable food source for waterfowl than native plants that they are used to feeding on. Because they form dense mats over the top of the water, especially the floating aquatic, they can dissolve oxygen levels and increase the amount of sedimentation. Basically, the organic matter, as it rots, goes down to the bottom, and it can form really thick layers of organic matter. So here's some examples of non-native pathogens. There's amphibian chytrid fungus, white nose syndrome on bats, whirling disease, which is a disease that causes the fish to it attacks their nervous system and causes them to swim erratically. And then there's viral hemorrhagic septicemia, which is basically causes the fish to have open sores that then bleed profusely, and the fish will die from internal bleeding. So some of the characteristics of native pathogens: they're catastrophic to afflicted populations. The picture on your lower left is Lake Erie, and those are all gizzard shad that died off from that viral hemorrhagic septicemia. Mosquitoes, non-native mosquitoes, can spread pathogens. And a lot of these pathogens tend to be genera or species specific, but they're very persistent in remaining in the environment, and they could spread from location to location very easily. Some examples of invasive fauna species: there is the invasive du jour. There is the golden mussel, right center screen. Zebra and quagga mussels, that's the picture on your lower left, is basically a pipe over time that has been infected, settled upon by zebra or quagga mussels, and it basically clogs the pipes. Now, golden mussels pretty much will do the same thing, but they're much more resilient in terms of the environment that they can attack and settle in. Chinese mitten crabs, right around 1999, there was a huge mitten crab explosion in the Delta, and so far, fingers crossed, we haven't had another explosion of those crabs. New Zealand mussel, that's the photo in the lower right. Those things are so tiny that people who, fly fishermen who have wading boots, those things, if one were to get onto your wading boot laces, it's very difficult to see it, and you can spread it from one lake to another. Florida water snake, there's an active program that the California Department of Fish and Wildlife is embarking on to eradicate water snake from the Central Valley, and of course Asian clam. Those are Asian clam is fairly well established invasive species here in California. Common traits they have, same thing, aggressive competitor, high reproductive output. They can form extremely high density. They can alter the ecosystem dynamics. They're generalist and they tolerate extreme conditions. Some of the problems they cause, economic is the biggest one. Damage to infrastructure and resulting loss of resources. They are the second leading cause of native species extinction globally, and are responsible for a global loss of biodiversity. And of course, there are, in some instances, human health risks. Most notable are the Asian lung flu and the West Nile virus. Here are the current invaders here in California of concern. Of course, zebra and quagga mussel, and golden mussel, which has been characterized as a zebra quagga mussel on steroids because they have they can tolerate lower calcium concentrations in the water, and there are other environmental conditions that they can tolerate higher salinity in the water as well, so that they're really bad news. Mitten crab, Caulerpa. Currently, we're dealing with 2 Caulerpa invasions here in California, in Southern California. European green crab is also a concern. It is competing with our native Dungeness crab, and of course Asian clam. And I'll go more into detail about some of these. So Caulerpa, it's not a plant, it's a seaweed that grows so fast that it can quickly overwhelm native species. It has toxins. It has toxins in its tissue that are unpalatable to many grazing animals. So a lot of things don't feed on it, at least not where it's been introduced. There are examples of different types of bacteria and stuff where it is native that feed on it, but so far, very few things feed on it here. Originally, it was native to tropical waters of the Pacific Ocean, Indian Ocean, and Caribbean Sea. And there are 2 species. There's Caulerpa prolifera and Caulerpa taxifolia, and there are that have been here in California. And there are some other species, but all those species of Caulerpa are outlawed in California. In 2000. Someone releasing contents of their aquarium released a Caulerpa taxifolia, which is in the upper left there, in Huntington Beach, and that removal and eradication cost about $7 million and took 6 years to eradicate. And so currently, there are 2 invasions of Caulerpa prolifera, which is in the bottom left there. They look very different than taxifolia, excuse me. There's one in Newport Bay, and the more recent one in San Diego Bay. Moving on to European green crab. I mean, we've been dealing with European green crab for a while now. It was introduced to the East Coast in the 1800s via ballast water. And it was initially spotted in California in 89, and then also it was seen all the way up in Alaska in 2022. It's considered a top threat to the marine environment, and it's been documented to prey on juvenile king crab and juvenile salmon. It'll outcompete Dungeness crab. They're smaller than Dungeness crab, but they're much more, they're faster and they're more aggressive. And it'll feed on eelgrass habitat, which provides habitat for a number of our native species. Asian clam, it's been around here in California for a really long time. It was initially introduced in the 1800s for human consumption. It forms high densities and outcompetes native clams. It can clog pipes, valves, and sprinklers in our infrastructure. It can trap sediment and form bars in agricultural canals and alters flow. And it's been pointed out is one of the possible causes for pelagic fish decline in the delta. So the word pelagic basically means that open ocean, and so pelagic organisms, what they do is they feed in the open ocean on particles that are floating in the water column. And since Asian clams filter out these particles, they take the energy that is in the water column, i.e. pelagic, and move the energy down into the area of the sediments, which is called benthic. So they've shifted our delta system from what used to be a pelagic system to a mostly benthic type of system. They can accumulate toxins, so even though they're introduced for consumption, wild ones are probably not safe to eat. And there are some mechanisms for controlling these: mechanical removal and chemicals. Mitten crab, this is a picture on the upper left there of the pumps down at Tracy. And it was overrun with mitten crabs in 1999, I want to say. Yeah, 1999. It was suspected this was an intentional release for human consumption, but they don't 100% know, and it may have been introduced via ballast water, but they believe it was more likely from intentional release for consumption. One of the big things with the mitten crabs is this threatening levee stability, because they burrow into the ground and form burrows to hide, and they could really damage a lot of levees in the Central Valley. They're host to the human lung fluke, and a specimen was recently discovered in the lower Columbia River in Oregon. So that's a big major river for salmon. Okay, some of the tools that professionals use is early detection and rapid response. It's better if we do as much things as possible to make sure that they don't get here, prevention. But if they get here, the quicker we respond and the quicker we can detect the invasive species and respond in terms of eradicating it when it's a smaller population, is much easier and much less costly to deal with that invasive species. So early detection, rapid response is a big thing. A tool we can use to detect when maybe there may be like one or two, when we suspect that there might be an invading organism, but we don't have a lot of evidence, is we can use environmental DNA, basically take a sample of the water column and run an assay for that suspected invasive species. And if it shows up positive, then we could do more monitoring in that area to try and detect where the source of that DNA is coming from. Hazard analysis and critical control point planning. Basically, this is a process by which we want to minimize the risk of introducing or spreading non-target species from one location or another through our activities. And so for the Fish and Wildlife Service, we have a program whereby every single field office in California and Nevada has a list of HACCP plans, which are specific to the activities that they undertake. And each plan identifies which activities might create risk and then what we need to do to minimize that risk. And that could be, power washing with, hot water, the hulls of the boats, or taking our field equipment and soaking it in various decontamination chemicals and or freezing the monitoring equipment prior to the next use, those sorts of things. We also have a lot of wildlife inspectors, and at our international ports of call, we have canine sniffing dogs that look for that are trained on various notable invasive species, detecting various notable invasive species. Throughout California and Nevada, there are many vehicle boat inspection and decontamination stations. And then we have databases we can refer to, both in terms of entering data saying, well, there's a sighting at this location, as well as being able to refer to, well, okay, where's the species detected and is my area at risk? We often use lots of different chemical treatments, but none of these activities can occur without both outreach. If the public isn't aware, then we see the public as a line of defense in helping us. And then many agencies are involved in reducing, and eliminating invasive species. And so we need to do lots and lots of coordination. So what can you do as a citizen? The more aware you are, the better off we are in terms of having many eyes, ears to the ground in terms of, trying to help us detect invasive species. And a educated public is better able to plan accordingly in terms of, basically just having at the forefront of one's mind that, okay, I'm doing these activities. What sort of prevention steps do I have in place to make sure that I'm doing my part not to spread invasive species? And once you're aware, then you can develop and implement these behaviors in your recreational activities. If you happen to see a suspected sighting, right now golden mussel is the big one. There's a 877 number, stop ANS. You can call if you suspect that there's a invasive species, you've detected an invasive species. And then take an active role both in what you do, but if you see other people doing behaviors out there that are creating risk of spreading invasive species, they know the proper behaviors, and then spread the word about aquatic invasive species. Here's just at the bottom of the slide is a list of efforts. Habitatitude is one effort. Don't move a mussel is another big one. 100th Meridian Initiative is another. And then, of course, there's our Clean, Drain, Drop campaign. And let's see. So that's all I have, Vivian. Are there any questions from folks out there?
Thank you, Cesar, for our participants in the working group or workshop today. We started from the bird's eye view perspective because it is important for all of us to understand why we need to get educated about invasive species. You just realize about not only the economical impact, a lot of people are more attracted to learn about how much money it is costing not only the state, but also the nation to really fight against these organisms But also we learned the importance about being aware, empower ourselves with education. And I want to remind you that in the handouts that you receive, all the resources that are being referenced during the workshop will be included, not only important phone numbers, but also other resources for you to keep handy. So again, we started from the bird's eye view perspective, and now we're going to jump into more specifics about different organisms, as you saw in the email that attracted you to register for this workshop. So now it is time for any questions or comments that are specifically related to this presentation. And before we jump into the salt invasive species presentation led by Jonathan with the State Lands Commission. Any questions about CSAR presentation or any comments? Feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand and I can let you speak if you want. Yeah, Diana, go ahead and unmute yourself, please.
Hi, yeah, I was just curious on invasive species. I know that you said that some of them come from other areas through boating and things like that, but are any of them genetic organisms or hybrids, like species? I mean, because you said that they don't have predators and stuff like that. Are they man-made? Is that what's causing them to not have any predators?
Well, the point I was trying to make there, Diana, is that since the typical invasive, you could have a species that is like, for example, Caulerpa, which is that seaweed that is native to the eastern United States. Okay, but it's not native to the coastal waters of California. And so in that instance, there are organisms that readily will feed upon Caulerpa in the eastern United States. And we have different species here that did not evolve with Caulerpa. And so, it's sort of it's an alien entity there that they don't recognize as a food source. And so they don't prey upon it, that sort of thing. But that's even more the case when you have, let's say, golden mussel, which is originally from Southeast Asia, and it gets introduced over here to California. There are very few predators that recognize it as a food source. And oftentimes what makes an invasive species successful is they have countermeasures, i.e. they have toxins, they have certain behaviors that lend themselves to being difficult for native species to feed upon. So hopefully I answered your question.
Just one more clarification. Are you finding that any of them are man-made or genetically, created?
Not necessarily man-made, but the way they get here is almost universally by human hands. So if you want to say that, well, golden mussels are here because human activities, you're 100% correct. Without us having, shipping vessels, we wouldn't have most of the invasive species that are in California currently.
Okay, yeah, I was curious more about lab created, but thank you.
Is there any benefit to the presence of an invasive
Hold on,
species?
Paul. Let me just go order. I'll let you ask the question. We have one question from the chat first, and I'll let you go, Paul. Troy is asking, Cesar, is the Caulerpa prolifera still in Newport Beach?
They are currently in the post removal monitoring phase, and so they're looking around. I haven't heard anything specifically where they identified new pockets of Caulerpa prolifera in Newport Bay, but there were many instances where they thought they had eradicated it and it popped up again. And so, this isn't a go out one time and eradicate it and we're done. This is like multiple eradication efforts followed by multiple surveys. And then to your question, Paul, are there any invasive species that are beneficial? Well, that's a tough one. I mean, one notable species that was introduced into California is striped bass. And at one point in time, it was, a lot of people like to fish for striped bass, but, I wouldn't say that striped bass are invasive, but I would say that they're an alien species that can have some invasive or detrimental impacts to our native species, particularly salmon. They will definitely feed on juvenile salmon. So I can't think of any current native species that's having a positive effect on our native environment.
Thank you. So we have a question from Paul Stein. Any benefit to the presence of an aquatic invasive species? That's the one that you just responded. And let me let Aaron, who raised their hand first, and then we'll go to the chat back to Robert. Aaron, feel free to unmute yourself.
Yes. So you had mentioned San Francisco Bay and Delta area, Sacramento Delta, as being like the largest area of invasive species. Is there any thought or research going on as to why that is? I mean, obviously there's a lot of shipping that goes through there, but also what was that again about the number of invasive species that are found currently on average? It was something 12 in the last decade.
Oh yeah. So that one was essentially that
What happened?
you're talking about. We have a new species every 12 weeks. Yeah. That's basically an average, and I would say that a lot of those species don't establish. They, and that would include a lot of invasive copepods, really, really small organisms that come from like Asia or South America. They're not native here. And ballast water program is meant to reduce the harm. It doesn't eliminate the harm. I think Jonathan will go into that a little bit later on, but there's always a potential for those activities to introduce species that are alien to our environment. Doesn't mean that they're going to establish themselves.
Then Robert, do you want to unmute yourself and ask the question, or do you want me to read the chat question?
You're muted, Robert.
You're still muted.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes. I have a sailing boat in a clean harbor, and how does that qualify in terms of helping eradication, a clean harbor?
So
And
you
what
have
do
a
you
boat
mean?
in a clean
What?
harbor?
Yeah, what do you mean by a clean harbor?
Well, they have a clean harbor certification.
Oh, you're saying it's not a clean harbor, it's a clean part of the
Clean
clean
marina,
certificate.
sorry.
Yeah, clean marina.
Clean marina.
So I can answer that question. They do have some parameters for the marinas when they go through the process of certification or recertification to understand if they are complying with the, let's say, best management practices for that particular program. So that means that they are implementing some practices. I don't know in what capacity they are actively monitoring the boats, but that means that they have been educated in terms of working with the boaters a little bit closer in terms of BMPs for preventing the spread of invasive species. But that would be a good question just to see once the program goes back and get reactivated, because probably you know or don't know they have been not active for quite some time, to see if they're going to be monitoring the marinas for that specific purpose.
So we're not monitoring marinas that well, and we need to look at funding from the state of California or the U.S. government in order to make this happen. Is that correct?
Yeah, probably that's the case, and that's why the state has been working in different capacities, including this directly with the public to empower the public to implement the practices. So it's up to all of us, not only the voters, the general public, water enthusiasts, state, local agencies, but all of us to help to be part of the process. We have a question from Bill Du, and he says, what caused the decline and disappearance of the Chinese mitten crab in San Francisco and Bay Delta?
The short answer is we don't 100% know why that is. I mean, it was pretty drastic to see hundreds of thousands of mitten crabs there in the mob the state and federal pumps. And then it just went away. I actually wasn't in my position at that time. My colleague who is next on the queue there, Jonathan Thompson, was around when the mitten crabs did their state of California tour, the swarm. He may be able to provide some insight with regards to what is the reason why they seem to have just mostly disappeared from California when they were in such high numbers.
Jonathan, do you want to talk a little bit about that if you know?
I can talk about what I know. I won't talk about what I'll guess is the reason that they're gone. But they typically go through they're a boom and bust species. So their numbers get really high and then they get really low. And so when they were first introduced, it was a new habitat, and they really exploded in population. Part of the reason that my program exists is because because of the mitten crab. The other part would be quagga and zebra mussels. But yeah, so they have these booms and busts, and there was good efforts in areas like in the South Bay in San Jose, some of the creeks down there, in Coyote Creek. I've been down there, looked at what they did, and they basically created a trap for them, and that probably wiped them out there. And so, they're migratory species. So they kind of do the opposite of salmon. So they reproduce in sort of around we think it was around San Pablo Bay, about 18 parts per thousand. We call that sort of that medium brackish, which means it's lower than open ocean water, but it's about half of what open ocean water would be in salinity, a little more than that. But so that's where they spawn, and then they move up into the freshwater areas. But when they were moving downstream to spawn, they were clogging up the plants, the pumping plants down in the south end of the delta, and so it may have been that they and they definitely saw tremendous numbers there. They estimated that at one year they found 750,000, but they were doing that based on I don't know exactly how they did their estimates, but it was a lot, and it could have been a lot more than that. So it could have been a combination of environmental factors and then sort of getting in areas where they were captured.
Thank you, Jonathan. So now let's switch gears and start focusing on specific cases. And we're going to be now continue with Jonathan again with the State Lands Commission to talk about marine invasive species, causes, case studies, and what you can really do. Thank you, Jonathan, for being here.
Yes.
You're on.
Thank you. Yeah. So my first question is actually my poll.
Yeah,
and this
let me just release the poll here. So let me just go back.
and this one's
And
the
then,
one about the pathways, Vivian.
yes, I have them number here. So again, now you see in your screen a question. Please go ahead and take a minute to respond. We want full participation. Which of the following are pathways for invasive species? Shipping, movement of recreational watercraft, aquarium trade, all of the above. And I had my glasses when I typed this in, so no typos, which is great. All right, so we have 57 participation percent, 60. I want us to go up to closer to 90. So, and we have almost 20 more seconds to go. And almost there. And I'll finish and share the results with all of you so then Jonathan can educate us in terms of the response. 5 more seconds. All right, so let's end the poll and let me share the results. And Jonathan.
Yeah. So it looks like we had almost everybody got it right. We had the answer was all of above. So this was a test to see how well Caesar did, and he did a phenomenal job. But yeah, this would be all of the above. So shipping, movement of recreational watercraft, aquarium trade, all of those are pathways for how invasive species are moved around. Of course, there's other ones that aren't mentioned there, but those are some of the ways that they're moved around.
Excellent. I'm going to stop sharing. And do you want me to launch right now the second poll?
Nope, I'll that'll be during my second presentation, so that'll be after
The
my
break.
first presentation here. There we
Perfect.
go. Which is marine invasive species and what you can really do to prevent aquatic hitchhikers. Or aquatic hitchhikers would be invasive species. So we don't want those species hitching a ride on your boats or other things that you're trying to move. So as a quick refresher, I'm gonna just really briefly go over this, how organisms moved, pathways and vectors. So we got aquaculture, shipping, aquarium trade, boating, recreational watercraft, all these different things. So that's those are the pathways, and then how they're moved. So we'll focus in on boating and shipping. So it would be the ships and the boats themselves, right? That would be the vector, or how the specific mechanism within a pathway for how things are being moved. Things being invasive species. Okay, so I'm going to break my presentation up into two different groups of species. The first being biofouling species, and then the second being mobile species. So biofouling are things that are going to be attached to a ship or a vessel, or in this case, the boat. And then we have mobile species, and those would be the free swimming species or free moving species, like the pelagic species that Caesar was just talking about, things that live in the water or things that are crawling around in and amongst the biofouling organisms. Okay. So we'll get into some specifics about those. So biofouling organisms, as Caesar had already talked about, but we really want to focus in and reinforce this, is that they're organisms that are attached to or associated with underwater or wetted surfaces. So if you have a boat, that is going to be the underwater or wetted parts of your boat. Or if it's a marina at the docks, you walk around at the docks and you could see a lot of times when we were looking for doing surveys, when Undaria or wakame, which is a species that is found in miso soup. So folks eat that. I've eaten it before. But when we were doing surveys for that, we would walk around some of the marinas in San Francisco, and we would just look down at the docks. We could see sometimes they'd be attached to a boat. We saw that in Half Moon Bay. So anyways, yeah, so that's what would be that's what we call biofouling. And so I already talked about Undaria or wakame. It's a non-native species, invasive species that is established in Northern California at at some of our areas, like in Half Moon Bay, Monterey Bay, San Francisco Bay. Yeah. And then there's just the general things that you might classify as aquatic vegetation, something that looks green. Sorry about that. Yeah, so you could see those, basically something growing on whatever surface is under the water or has been wet. And so how is biofouling moved? Well, it's moved attached to boats or ships. And I have a nice graphic that I'm going to show again in my next presentation as well, but that goes over the biofouling process. Now, this is of a ship, but just imagine that if this is a container ship, but just imagine it's a boat. It's the same process. So you have a boat that's sitting in the water, and as it's sitting, organisms can attach to it, right? So when they attach, they're there and they're attached. So when a vessel moves from one port to another port, all those organisms that are attached to it can then be moved to another port. When the vessel or ship or boat arrives at a new port or marina, what ends up happening is a lot of times the organisms are there and they're like, oh, this is an interesting new habitat. I'm going to some of them then, because of different stressors or the new habitat, they may actually spawn at that point. When you're docking the boat, when you're in the marinas, sometimes you're connecting with something, or some of the organisms could be knocked off and fall off, and that's another way that the biofouling species get established. Okay, so that's the that's how biofouling species are typically moved. So now I'm going to talk about what boaters can do to prevent moving species. Okay, so we'll go over these in detail, and then Vivian, in the resources that we have, has some really nice resources. Gosh, I got a lot of meetings happening today, but this is the most important one. So, okay. So you can coat your boat, you clean before you go, select and use appropriate cleaning methods, and then put all those into a plan for how to manage your biofouling on your boat. So firstly, we're going to talk about coating your boat, right? So what you can do is you can apply an appropriate anti-fouling coating suited to your boat's operating profile. And I'll talk a little bit about the operating profile after I go over the idea behind the coating is to minimize. So we minimize the growth on your boat. And by doing that, you're gonna have a clean hull, hopefully. And you're gonna promote efficient sailing or motoring. And it'll end up saving you fuel, which in turn saves money. This is a good thing. And so as far as the coating, we want to look at your operational profile. So consider if you have a trailered boat or you have a boat that's slipped or moored. Do you move around a lot? Do you go great different distances? Do you just go from your marina where you're at and then go out for a sunset cruise and then come back? So thinking about how your operational profile for your boat is an important aspect for what coating to choose. Now, if you're going to choose a coating, there's 3 general types of coatings. We have non-biocidal coatings. Hold on just a second. We have non-biocidal coatings. And then we have the biocidal coatings or paints, which consist of 2 different categories, which are the non-copper and the copper. So for the non-copper, typically that's paints that include things like zinc. And then obviously for copper, they're made of copper. If you're going to choose to use one of these, it's really important to check with your local regional water quality control board to determine what the best, or if you can do cleaning of that coating, and if cleaning is even allowed. In some areas it may not be. And then for the preferred one that is most recommended in California would be to use non-biocidal paints. And those are typically made of, made of silicone, ceramic, or epoxy materials. And like I said, they're encouraged statewide, especially in waters that are impacted by copper. Okay, so those are the different types of coatings. Okay, now hopefully you got all that, but if you didn't, I mentioned that we have some great resources. And again, you can write down that website, but Vivian has already provided them to you in the links that were part of the materials for this. But I just wanted to point it out that I'm going over very briefly what is available in a much bigger format and more in-depth format. Okay. So moving on, as far as biofouling, so we talked about coatings. Now we're talking about cleaning, and so the idea behind cleaning is that you want to clean so that you're making it so that the slime layer, which is the first layer that biofouling needs to attach. So before you get the barnacles and the mussels and the wakame or whatever else it might be, there's a slime layer that would be there, and so keeping your boat maintained with cleaning is an important part of that. And it can, the cleaning, as we talked about with the coatings, it can also reduce your drag, promote efficient sailing, and reduce your costs. And it can help maintain your paint investment. Okay, so a couple different types of cleaning. Basically, we're talking about in-water cleaning, and we're talking about hauling your boat out and having it cleaned. So those are the two main ways that you're going to be looking at that. One important aspect of the in-water cleaning is check with your local or your paint manufacturer, your marina, again, your regional water quality control board about the in-water cleaning and best practices and some in-water cleaning with capture potential methods. So there's a lot of information out there about those, but keeping your boat clean is an important part of managing for biofouling. So what you can do, so you can take all of what we talked about and you can put it into a plan. And so that would have what your coating is and how frequently you feel like it should be cleaned, what your operating profile is, all those things. And then you can have a logbook where you're recording that all of those things are being taken care of. So it's that would be a good reason to have a plan, is to have all that information in one place. Okay. So now, did you get all that? Well, if you didn't, there's another resource that we have. So this is a placard or a brochure that was developed by the Western Regional Panel on Aquatic Invasive Species. And again, it's actually listed in the resources under the California State Lands Commission's part, but it's developed by the Western Regional Panel. But it is in the materials that you have, and it talks about what I just talked about. So if you didn't catch what I was talking about and want more information, this is a great resource. And it's 2 short pages. Okay, so that's enough for the biofouling species. And I don't want to ignore mobile species, although the mechanisms for how they're moved are a little bit different. So these are organisms that would not be attached to the boat. but they could be associated with the biofouling. So when you get a community of biofouling organisms, these mobile organisms can sort of live and move around because that biofouling provides structure for them. Think about if you're familiar with kelp, think about the hold fast and how organisms can sort of move around in that. And so some examples, just generically, Caesar did a great job of talking about some of the specific examples, but we have fish, we have free swimming life stages, which those could be the spawn from things like green crab, and green crab is another free swimming. And then you could have actually fragments of aquatic vegetation, probably more something that's in the freshwater area, but certainly could be, I guess, Clerpa potentially, but pieces of aquatic vegetation. So how are they moved? Well, they're moved in areas that hold water or, like we talked about, associated with biofouling, but everybody's going to have a great biofouling plan in place for their boats. So hopefully that gets managed that way. And then I know it's not boater related, but aquarium releases, really important not to dump your pets in your local waterways. Take them to your local pet stores and they will help you figure out how to address them. So what you can do, mobile organisms, don't release live bait, don't dump your aquariums, and follow your biofouling management plan. And with that, I will take questions.
Thank you, Jonathan. We have one question in the chat. Is there any evidence of microtransmission, example, sailboat traveling, excuse me, from an Oakland estuary marina to Half Moon Bay or further away to Morro Bay? And feel free to respond, and then I have some extra information if you want.
Can you, it was about micro transmission?
Yeah, microtransmission is in the chat. Microtransmission, as for example, a sailboat traveling from an Oakland estuary marina to Half Moon Bay or further away to Morro Bay.
So I don't want to say that there's no examples, but we don't have any examples. We are fairly so the thing with invasive species, and I'll talk about this when I talk about golden mussels on the next presentation, is that a lot of times we don't know how a species was moved around or how it was introduced. So when we talk about the pathways, those are our best, most informed, our best informed decision about how we think they were moved. And so an example that was relatively recent, and I talked about Wakame, is we think that the local movement within Northern California is what really drove the spread to the different marinas because it was showing up. It wasn't showing up outside of the marinas, like in rocky structure. It was, or different pilings. It was showing up in local marinas. So we think that might be how that species was moved.
Yeah, and I can just complement the response by saying that whole fouling on small recreational vessels is a known vector for invasive species spread along the California coast, including to Morro Bay, but no studies have documented a specific Oakland, Half Moon Bay, Morro Bay transmission event, even though direct case tracking is rare for specific individual boats. And we know, for example, that a research that I'm going to include in the chat in a few seconds from Cal Poly Center of Coastal Marine Sciences state that no native species arrive in Morro Bay on the hulls of ships where they thrive and displace native organisms. But exactly the mechanism you are asking about, the vessel mediation transport of individual organisms, is difficult to specifically track, is more expensive, right? So let me include in the chat the study that I just mentioned, but it's more like a big shipping vessels. I have here Robert, Paul, and then I'll go to you, Diana. So Robert is saying, how do abandoned boats that are sunk at the bottom of the bay or offshore help and harm the environment? Oh, well, that's a different topic. So there's a lot of documentation, Robert, about abandoning boats in terms of potential disposal or discharge of hazardous waste, impacting the sediments of the ecosystem, plus the discharges of different chemicals into the environment. That's why the state has the SAFE program and also has received different grants from the federal governments to work with different counties to remove of abandoned boats. It's a big issue, but that's a little bit a different topic, even though it's related because they can also be a substrate for invasive species if they're coming from different locations. Paul Stein is saying any tax benefit, if shown to keep boat clean, would be a good incentive.
I don't know.
Yeah. Then Diana, feel free to ask your question.
Oh, I just want to say I was shaking my head as a no, but that was a I don't know. So
For the incentive, you're saying.
right.
Yeah, I know for the incentive, which is not a tax incentive, but is like when you have extra insurance, for example, when you go to a marina or a harbor, a lot of the harbors are looking for boaters to have the extra insurance, for example, for spill related situations, but not a specific incentive. So to keep your boat clean because it would be clean for what, right? Clean for sewage, clean for hazardous waste, clean for invasive species. There are so many potential sources of boat pollution, right?
But maybe if you had that biofouling management plan and you're logging all the activities, that might help with decreasing your insurance costs. I don't know if that's something that might happen, but certainly you could gain some benefits for if you're traveling quite frequently, you could gain some benefits on the cost side of reducing fuel.
Exactly. Diana, feel free to ask your question.
Okay, so around 2019-20, my daughter was accepted into Berkeley for college. This happened around the pandemic, and there were a bunch of Facebook pages that we were connected to. And I saw research groups posting from Berkeley about projects that they were doing, putting organisms, things in the water. And I don't remember all the details now of what the studies and the research were, but they're introducing programs and organisms to, get rid of something or change the environment. And so that's obviously a mechanism that a lot of research hasn't been done that can be affecting that. And that's always concerned me that these kind of virgin ideas were being introduced to the ocean. So I just wanted to bring that forward and get some feedback on that. And if anyone's researching how those programs are affecting our ocean waters.
I'm not familiar with the programs that you're referring to. But if it was, a species that was introduced for biocontrol, there's biocontrol is using other species for biocontrol has been a method that's been used. And it's sometimes some of those species that are introduced to control another nuisance, they can themselves become invasive species. I don't want to speak for California Department of Fish and Wildlife about some of the restrictions they have on moving species around for that specific purpose. But I think if you're going to be moving species around, there are some potential limits on what you can do. Maybe Catherine, when she jumps on, could talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Then we have two more questions in the chat. Do you have any guidelines for the biofoul hazard maintenance plans for marinas?
Do I?
Yes, that's a question. It's from Ian.
I'm not familiar with like any specific guidance, but I would think that it would probably be something that would be similar to the boating guidance, Now, I do want to reference one of the programs that Caesar talked about, the hazard analysis and critical control point. And really, to me, it would be like a project by project situation where you could have, maybe you're requiring that boaters have a biofouling management plan, or if you're doing construction in an area and you're bringing vessels in from other areas, make sure that they have some sort of method for cleaning before they leave the port that they're leaving from. Or if you have divers getting in the water, make sure that their gear is coming clean, because anytime things are being moved into your marina or your area, your harbor, there's a potential that piece, equipment, boat, whatever it might be, could have a species associated with it, and it could be moved. But that program for the HACCP program would be a good program, and I know Caesar's got some of those courses that he's hosting on that tool coming up. So that would be I would get in contact with Caesar and see if that's something that you'd be interested in.
And the last question we have before we go on a 10-minute break is we have a question from Kenichi, who's a sailboater. And he said, I have done almost no work on my hull. Are there any trainings for the divers that can service hulls? And I can respond that one. So there's an association called the California Divers Association, where they offered trainings for divers across the state so they can follow what we call best management practices. What is the meaning of that? So, for example, Kenichi, in order to protect your boat and your investment and also the water quality and also the impact on the water quality would be just, for example, that they use non-abrasive methods to clean the bottom of the boat. So that means that they don't release a color plume in the water, because that means that your heavy metals are getting released into the water, and that can really impact the life of your paint. So they also go through different best management practices. So there are some associations doing that. And for example, they are pretty good in Southern California, where we have a lot of the total TMDL, which are total maximum daily load, which is a regulation of the Clean Water Act that is specifically for copper. For example, the Port of San Diego and Marina del Rey. That's why in the chat I included the link to the different paints that Jonathan mentioned. Because in some areas they have to be very strict about what paint can be used in those water bodies to protect the water quality of those locations. So long story short, yes, there are some divers that go through the training to make sure they protect the boat and also the environment.
Vivian, can I also add that when you're knocking off those organisms, there's always that chance that those organisms then could become established in that area. So there's the in-water cleaning with capture is, I don't know if that's part of their recommendations, but
Sure. They also make sure that whatever they are collecting, they are properly disposed of. And also when they are cleaning, they protect the boat, the investment, the water quality, and also they go over the alternative for paints that the boater might use when they go to the boatyard. So, based on our agenda, it is time for our 10-minute break. So, right now is 10:20, and we are going to come back at 10:30. I'm going to start right now the timer. Feel free to get connected. We'll be back in 10 minutes, and please feel free to come back in 10 minutes so we start right on time, okay? We will start in 4 more minutes. Okay. I hope everybody can start coming back to your computers. We have 1 more minute to go, but I know it takes time for all of us to settle down and start our transition. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. And before we transition to Catherine, I wanted to mention also to Kenichi, and I apologize if I'm not properly pronouncing your first name correctly. A lot of several marinas across the state only allowed certain divers in their marina that have fulfilled their like requirements. So, for example, as I mentioned before, several harbors like the Port of San Diego or Marina del Rey only allow certain divers that have gone through their training process to allow those certified divers to do any kind of work in their harbor. So I wanted just to clarify that. Okay, Catherine, are you there?
I am here.
I think I'm
Okay.
up though, aren't I?
Oh yeah, we
Yeah.
still have Jonathan still has something to say.
Yes, yes, yes. No, I wanted just to make sure that the two of you
Okay.
were ready because I saw you, Jonathan, so no problem. All right, so I think that everybody is here, and I know we have another poll. So let me
Oh, wait,
post
I don't need the
that.
poll quite yet.
Okay, perfect. So
Yeah.
feel free to jump in and share the screen, and we'll take it from there.
Okay. I have a slide that says poll on it. So let's see. I think I'm going to try something a little different. Let's see if it works. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, good. I've made it so I tried to just share the presentation so if I get meeting announcements that pop up that they don't show up during my presentation. So um okay. So here I am again, Jonathan Thompson, with the California State Lands Commission's Marine Invasive Species Program. So now we're switching gears a little bit, and we're going to focus in on one or a few specific species. My specific species or species that I'm going to be talking about is the golden mussel, and shipping as a vector for that species, and some assumption and facts. Okay, here we go. Okay. So again, I like to go broad and talk about how things are moved around, and we're going to talk a lot about since this presentation is focused on how the golden mussel was potentially moved here. So switching gears from boating to shipping still involves boats. We refer to them as ships, but shipping is responsible for up to 79% of established non-indigenous aquatic non-indigenous species. That's what NIS stands for in North America. And this prevention through vector management is the most effective way to reduce the risk of invasive species transfer. So we're going to get into ship biofouling first. And this is the same slide that I had up earlier. You might recognize it. But for those of you that are just joining the presentation, biofouling are organisms that are attached to or associated with the wet or wetted portions of the vessel. In this case, the ship would be the wet or wetted portions, and they're at a source port or one port, and organisms attach that vessel. The vessel then moves to a different port. When it arrives at that port, those organisms can fall off. So that's the process for how biofouling is moved around. Biofouling species are moved around. For ballast water, it's a little bit different, and Caesar did cover this as well. But again, I think repetition is good here. It's very similar, but in this case, instead of the organisms being attached to the wetted portions of the vessel, wet or wetted portions of the vessel, they're associated with the water itself in the form of ballast water. So when a vessel is discharging cargo at a port, in order to go to another port with those empty holds, they have to load ballast water for stability and safe traveling. And so, in number one there, they're discharging cargo and uploading ballast water. And then as they voyage, they're moving with ballast water and potentially all those organisms that were in that water. And then when they get to that new port, they discharge the water and potentially all of those organisms that are in that water. And then they will load that cargo, and then they travel to another port full of cargo. So that's the nuts and bolts of how ballast water can act to move species around. So how is ballast water? We're not going to get into the biofouling part, but biofouling, or I'll just talk about it briefly. Biofouling is managed very similar to what we had talked about in the in the previous presentation where vessels are required to have a plan for managing their hull and some of the other areas of the vessel. Those other areas are referred to as niche areas, but basically it's the non-hull parts of the vessel that are wet or wetted. So that's why we call it biofouling instead of hull fouling. Okay, so for ballast water exchange, for ballast water management, ballast water is managed in roughly two different ways. Historically, up until around 2016, it was managed through ballast water exchange. So you exchange that source port coastal water, right? So we'll say San Francisco water. And if they're traveling to Los Angeles, they would then exchange that water at a certain distance from land with oceanic water. So the oceanic water has lower organisms potentially, and those organisms aren't as well suited to survive in the coastal habitat. So the idea is to reduce the risk of moving species. So that's how ballast water exchange works. Ballast water treatment, on the other hand, was designed to treat ballast water discharges and reduce the risk. So the way that I like to explain this to people, most people are familiar with swimming pools and chlorine. To a lesser extent, folks are familiar with other types of technology to treat swimming pools or water, which would be using UV technology, or maybe even people have heard about a saltwater pool, which basically takes advantage of the chlorine that's in the salt. So that's how ballast water treatment systems work. They filter water and then they treat it using the different types of treatment technologies that are out there. And beginning in about 2016, we had a big paradigm shift from vessels using ballast water exchange to vessels using ballast water treatment. And that was based on U.S. Coast Guard law, California's law, and international laws. The idea behind this type of management for ballast water is to reduce the risk to a level, but it's not going to eliminate risk. And really, the only way to eliminate risk of moving invasive species around would be to not do that activity. In this case, not doing shipping. That's not something that's acceptable. So we have to reduce the risk to an acceptable level. And that's what we're working with. Okay. So how is it managed for California? What do we do? So here at the Commission, we implement ballast water discharge performance standards, and those performance standards set limits on the allowable concentration of organisms that can be discharged into California waters. And it isn't zero. I'll just tell you that. They were adopted and implemented in 2022, and they are equal to the federal standards. And as I mentioned before, the federal standards have been in place as sort of a rolling introduction based on different vessel operations since 2016. And in order to meet these performance standards, vessels use the treatment systems. So this is why we moved away from exchange, which was to do the management, which was exchange, moving towards treating the water to an allowable concentration of organisms. So again, risk reduction, not risk elimination. Okay, so now, if we could have my poll, Vivian.
Yes, sir, we can. So hold on for a sec. So that would be back. And that would be your question 2. So you should be seeing question 2, which is how many commercial ships make their way to California ports each year? So I'll give yourself 1 minute, and we wanted to emphasize we're transitioning here to freshwater invasive species, but we started from a bird's eye view perspective in terms of how, in particular, the shipping industry plays a role in this issue. So we have 30 more seconds to go, 47% participation. So I hope everybody is participating. This is about education, about empowering our actions to be part of the solution, and of course, learning. And we have 10 more seconds. I hope we can go all the way to 70% participation. So please, everybody, take your time to participate. Remember, be present. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll and share the results. Jonathan, all yours.
Okay, so yeah, so we had 4 folks that responded, got it correct. If you guessed 10,500, that is the average number of vessel arrivals we get every year into California.
Let me just stop sharing.
Thank you, Vivian. Okay, so I'm going to go into a little bit about our program and what we do to enforce our requirements. This will be available in lots of different formats, but if you'd like more information about our program, you can use that link there or use the QR code for our program. So in California, with those approximately 10,500 arrivals a year, we have a mandate to inspect 25% of those arrivals, and we hit that. So we are able to, within that 25%, we're able to inspect all the vessels that are discharging because they're a high priority. And we have inspectors in Long Beach and Hercules. So Long Beach for Southern California, Hercules is in Northern California. And we inspect vessels at every port in California. So that's a little bit about our program. And now I'm going to get into golden mussel introduction knowns and unknowns. So what we know, initially detected in October of 2024, and they found multiple size classes. That's an important piece of information because that means they had been there long enough to have to reproduce. What we don't know is we don't know the actual introduction date, and we don't know if it was a result of single or multiple introduction events. So as I talked about in the previous presentation, we looking for specific examples of how a pathway has moved species. We almost never know exactly how a species was moved, especially even for a pathway, but let alone the actual introduction date. So what we know what their native range is, and we know what the introduced range is. What we don't know is there may be some things that we don't know about the introduced range, and if it exists in other areas that just hasn't been reported. So what we know is the initial detection was near the port of Stockton. What we think we know is it was likely introduced by a ship or multiple ships. It's the life history features for the golden mussel suggest that it was introduced from ballast water. Potential for biofouling, it would have been pretty tough for it to have been introduced with biofouling. But there's a potential for that, but most likely it was from ballast water discharge. And what we don't know is we don't know the specific ship or mechanism with certainty. Okay, so some assumption golden mussel introduction. Let's see. So the assumption here, assumption and facts. Introduction was because of a non-compliant ballast water discharge. So the reality is, remember, we're talking about risk reduction, not risk elimination. So you could have a compliant ballast water management that greatly reduced that risk, but it didn't eliminate it. So it could be that some of those organisms, some of those golden mussels may have slipped through. So what are we doing now? This is kind of a cool update, is we're working with some of my colleagues at the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center to evaluate shipping pressure on California ports for fresh and brackish water ports from 2000 to 2024. So that should cover the area when the golden mussel was potentially introduced. So we're also looking at the potential for coast-wide spread to other Pacific and brackish water ports, and the potential for long-distance spread to the East Coast and the Gulf states for the potential introduction. And this is something that is going to be published in a peer-reviewed journal. So you may be hearing more about that in the future. So more on what we're doing now. We have a rulemaking to incorporate ballast water exchange for vessels that are arriving at our, we call them brackish water ports, but basically it's the ports that are that sort of low brackish, which is 18 parts per thousand, all the way down to our freshwater ports. And so vessels, we have an emergency regulation that's in place now, and we're working on the regular rulemaking. But vessels are required to exchange their ballast water in addition to meeting the performance standards, which is, like I mentioned, typically used with or met by using a treatment system. And what we like to call this is it's basically exchange plus treatment. So they're exchanging that high salinity, exchanging the local or the coastal water with that high salinity water, and that can be a biocide for those fresh and brackish water organisms. What we're also doing, we're trying to help protect Oregon and Washington by alerting those states if we have a vessel that is, as you guys might remember, the little diagram. So if they're offloading cargo, they're loading ballast. And so if they're loading ballast in Stockton or Sacramento, we're alerting them, Oregon and Washington, that if we know that their next port is going to an Oregon or Washington port, we're alerting them that there's a vessel on its way. Let's see. And then this is my last slide here. I do have a slide on questions, but I think we're going to take questions at the end. But if you wanted some data, look at data about either California's data for arrivals or and arrival patterns, or some of the Pacific states data, we have those resources there. You can use the QR code to find them. So with that, we're going to transfer to Catherine, and I'll stick around to answer questions about this topic at the end.
Thank you, Jonathan. So again, this was putting all of us into the context on how, in particular, the golden mussel got to California. Common question we got here, and from now on, we're going to be talking about freshwater invasive species. And now we're going to be joined by Catherine with the Department of Fish and Wildlife. She's going to be talking about the Quagga Sibria Golden Mussel Program, including vessel gear inspection and decontamination, and what we all can do to help to prevent the spread of these organisms. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Vivian, for that introduction. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then Vivian, do you want to go ahead and put up the poll?
Yes, and Bill will go over questions for both the recent presentation from Jonathan and Catherine at the end. So hold on your question. Okay, hold on for a sec. I'll launch the poll here. All right, so we have Catherine. So we have 3 questions from you, Catherine, and this is the first one. So please take your time and help us with the poll we have for all of you as part of this educational experience. and I'll give you a minute. And Catherine, let me know if you want me to share one poll after the other before your presentation.
Okay. We'll do them both. We'll do them both right now. We'll see how much people know already.
Okay, perfect. No problem. So we have 30 more seconds to go, and I want to encourage everybody to participate, to be here as part of this educational workshop. We have 15 more seconds to go. All right. Excellent. So we have 80% participation. I'm going to stop here the poll and share the results. So Catherine, take it from there, please.
Yes, so the 16 that chose golden mussels, quagga mussels, and zebra mussels are correct. Now, this is going to be a crash course in biology for you all. This is just to see how much people know already. So if you didn't know this answer now, you're definitely going to know at the end of my presentation. We can go to the second one.
Excellent. Let me just go back now. So we have 2 more to go. All right. So this is the second one. And then we have one more poll. So I'll give you a minute for all of you to respond. And also we want to remind everybody that after we're done, we're going to send you a follow-up email with the link of all the presenters, as well as some resources for you to expand your knowledge and evaluation form. Okay.
And yeah, it looks like we've got some informed people out there. So yes, the correct answer is the 3 most injurious aquatic invasive species in North America are the golden mussel, quagga mussel, and zebra mussel. And they all happen to be mussels. So that'll be something I'm going to address in my presentation as well. So sounds like we've got one more question, Vivian.
Yeah, and would you mind stop sharing your screen because you are letting other people see the responses? So
Yeah. That's
no
cheating.
problem. Excellent.
No cheatsies. Let me stop share. Okay.
Okay,
How's
perfect.
that?
Okay, no, I think that's it. Hold on for
Okay.
a second. We just yeah, that's it. And thank you, Vida, for letting us know. Okay, you can now go ahead and share your screen. And Bill, we'll go to your question once we're done with Catherine. So no worries about that.
So is everybody seeing my screen?
And we're seeing your desktop. And now we see your screen, but I'm seeing myself in your presenter. Perfect.
Okay. So hello, everybody. I'm Catherine Mandela with Fish and Wildlife, California Department of Fish and Wildlife. And I am here to really, hopefully you probably are up to your ears in information overload on aquatic invasive species, but I'm hoping you can dig deep and find a few more untapped brain cells to go over these last major ones that are the most injurious aquatic invasive species that is known to date. And I'm going to go through a few little nitty gritty things that are, well, basically to discuss what different agencies are doing. So with California Department of Fish and Wildlife, our main objective with this program, and the reason why I have a job, is because these aquatic invasive mussels, the 3 that we've mentioned, the golden mussel and then the quagga and zebra mussel, which are close cousins, they're the most injurious because they not only harm the environment, but they're also harming infrastructure and human activity. And this is why we have this program that with our department, we basically will facilitate monitoring statewide. We also offer vessel inspections and decontamination trainings, and not just for like water agencies and recreational agencies, but also for the general public. And we also assist all these agencies with a prevention plan and various programs that help keep aquatic invasive species out. And you'll see right there, the Fish and Game Code, we actually have a new updated code. It used to just be 2301 and 2302, but I had to add a 2303 there, which has added a few more invasive mussels, which I will talk about in a few more slides. But I'm not going to get into the details, all this mundane, regulatory and code information. But you have the links to these where you can go and read up on them. I'll briefly discuss them, but basically, these are the codes that agencies have to abide by. And then our agency also coordinates with the California Department of Food and Agriculture, and predominantly with quarantine vessels. Like if vessels come into our state from out of state, they have to go through an inspection. And, if any invasive mussel is found on them, they are quarantined and we are notified. And then we also have our law enforcement. Now it's not just the wardens, it's not just the California Department of Fish and Wildlife officers, but we also do collaborate with local sheriffs and rangers of different parks that will help. And then there's been some new bills passing because of the golden mussel issue, and the AB Assembly Bill 149 is one of them. Again, you can jot that down. You'll all have a copy of this presentation later, so if you want to refer back to these bills, you have access to them. Now, what are the prevention efforts being done in California? So you've already heard from both Jonathan and Caesar. So not only are the federal agencies and the State Lands Commission helping with these aquatic invasive species issues, but we also have the Department of Food and Agriculture. We have state parks and the Division of Boating and Waterways. Vivian is a representative of that. And then we also have the Department of Water Resources and local agencies, of course. So here we go, the nuts and bolts of my presentation. So a couple of things here. Those top three mussels that you see, to the left top, you see golden mussels. And then you see the two drycenid mussels, which are the zebra and quagga mussels. And the stripes on those are what gives their name, the zebra and the quagga. The quagga was basically it's an extinct relative to the zebra, which they both had stripes, and so that's why those mussels got that name. I'll discuss the ones on the bottom in a minute, but first off, I want to share some ways to identify these mussels. So when you're out and about on your boat or recreating along shorelines, fishing or hiking, and you come across some mussels or some organism that you don't recognize. These are some telltale signs, and these pictures will show. So in that first question of the poll, I had mentioned byssal threads. Those of you that have not heard of a byssal thread and what a byssal thread is, if you look at that upper right photo, the thumb pressing on that quagga mussel there, those little hairy things on the bottom that are stuck to the rock, those are what you call byssal threads. And that's how they attach to their substrates with, whether it's a rock, a dock, a bottom of a boat, even another organism, that's what they attach with. Now, the top three, even though the other two pictures, you don't see them, they have them. So golden mussels, zebra mussels, and quagga mussels all have those byssal threads. There are no native mussels or clams or anything in California or North America that have byssal threads. So if you see an organism with byssal threads, that's something you want to inform either my agency, well, basically just form the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, since we are the lead agency on the invasive mussel issue. Now, a couple of other telltale signs. There's definitely differences between the golden mussel and the quagga mussel. I'll get into some more nitty-gritty details later, but golden mussels, they don't have stripes on them. They're obviously a little bit of a different shape. The quagga and zebra mussels very much have a D shape to them, even when they're quite small, which I'll get into their life cycle here in a minute. The golden mussels will definitely, you'll notice their shells are thinner. They would crack easier. They don't have I mean, their byssal threads are not as pronounced as quagga and zebra mussels, but they're definitely there. But you may not always see them if you just see a shell. They're all a bivalve, meaning they have two shells that close together like a clam. So these are the main telltale signs of what to look for when you're in a freshwater environment. Though I do want to point out, golden mussels can handle some brackish water, meaning a mixture of fresh and salt water. So it's going to be, some kind of estuary and bay. So can they live in, let's say, San Pablo Bay? We're not finding them there at this point. We are seeing evidence of them. We haven't seen any, there's definitely golden mussels growing in Antioch. And wherever you see barnacles, that's where there's salt water starting to intrude into a freshwater system. And we're already seeing golden mussels in areas where barnacles are also able to survive. So just keep that in mind. I shared those bottom pictures. I'll start with, the other invasive Asian clam on the bottom right. Now, a lot of people, they'll see kind of like the ridges on clams and think, oh, they're stripes. Oh, I've seen, I've heard this a lot where, I've seen quagga mussel before. And, they were mistaking Asian clams for quagga or zebra mussel. Now, they are invasive. However, the Department of Food and Agriculture, they basically have a level of injuriousness to an invasive species. Asian clam are, like at C or, but look, they're basically like a level C. They have a level C, B, and A being the most injurious. So quagga, zebra, and golden mussels are definitely an A listed species. Whereas Asian clam, they're not as they're ubiquitous all over all over North America. And there really is no management program for them. They don't quite cause the damage that these mussels above do. So that's why they're classified as a C. Now, do burn into your memory what native ones look like, because they're here and we need to keep them strong. So if you look at the bottom left in the greenish area, we've got the California winged floater, which in the area that the Bay Delta area, you're going to find a lot of the California winged floater, and a bit south of, the whole central part of California, you'll see the California winged floater, and you'll see them. They don't have byssal threads. They burrow into the sediment. So either you're going to see them dead with just, the empty shell, maybe a stream or a reservoir had dropped elevation and you'll see them exposed in the air that way. Otherwise, they're bedded down below and you're not going to notice them. In the northern part of California, we have western purr shell. So you'll find those there. They won't have as much as that like hinged wing thing that that shape you see on the top, on the left picture there. They're a little just more oval shaped. So remember what those look like, because we want those to proliferate, and it's they're having a harder and harder time doing so with these invaders. So moving right along, I did want to share, there's a couple of other mussels that are kind of lookalikes. I wanted to share the Asian date mussel. I was seeing these around Benicia quite a bit about 3 years ago. I started noticing them about 4 years ago. I haven't been seeing them as much. It could have been a boom and bust, but they can be confused for sometimes now golden mussel. And then we also have another species called the axe-head mussel, which also can be confused for golden mussel. Now, there's a couple pictures going on right here. The far left picture, you'll see the axe-head mussel, which is a marine mussel. They like to be in a saltwater environment. We're seeing them around the Ventura area now. They're from Australia, and unfortunately, they will cause the same problems in a saltwater environment as the golden and quagga and zebra mussel would do in a freshwater environment. There was somebody there that had asked, I think it was Diane or somebody, I forget your name, apologies, but the mussels that you see on the hand in that picture, those are basically hybridized Western Mediterranean, or I'm sorry, Mediterranean mussels in our estuaries, like San Francisco Bay. You'll see them in Humboldt. You'll also see some of these they're called black mussels. And we have a native black mussel. And the two on the top of that hand are black mussel. They're actually hybridized ones. Somebody asked if things hybridize. Yes, they do. So this Mediterranean black mussel hybridized with the Pacific Western black mussel. And sometimes their shells are always black, but if you look at the mussels on the bottom of that hand, like in the palm of that hand, those are actually axe head mussels. And sometimes they look dark. Sometimes they have a very goldish color, but they can be confused sometimes. Was somebody trying to ask something? Okay, I heard voice come through. Okay, so I'm moving to the next slide here. Let's just start with the upper left corner. So see the part of the slide that says life cycles 3 to 10 years. So to have an understanding of the biology of, I'm going to say Dreissenid mussels for quagga and zebra because they're in the Dreissenid genus. So it'll just be easier, faster to say. So with Dreissenid mussels, their life cycle is basically from 3 to 5 years. They can live about 5 years. They start off in their larval stage called veligers, and that stage is microscopic. We don't see them with the naked eye. And this is crucial when people think, oh, well, my boat is clean, but there's water in it. And if you're a boater and familiar with trying to go through an inspection program at one of our reservoirs or lakes in California, they'll ask if there's any standing water, they're going to turn you around. Why? Because veligers could be in that water. We may not see them, but they may be in there. And it only takes them about a month for Dreissenid mussels to start developing a shell and attaching to something with, like the side of your boat or a rock or even a plant. And they don't attach to fish because of the sliminess of a fish, but they do attach to crawdads. I've even seen, dragonfly nymphs. So they're a problem. They will start growing and reach sexual maturity. They can start reproducing between 6 months to a year. So that's pretty quick. And with golden mussels, they actually can develop shells a little sooner than Dreissenid mussels. Golden mussels, their shells are not as thick. And by 3 weeks old, they can start attaching to substrates with, like a rock or a dock. And so they go through their life cycle a little bit faster. They can start reproducing a little bit faster than Dreissenid mussels can. And they can also live longer than Dreissenid mussels can. So they're really kind of like the invasive mussel on steroids. That's why they're getting so much attention right now. Now, there's still some things we're learning with the golden mussel, but we have learned with quagga mussels and zebra mussels that they can survive out of water for up to 45 days if it is cool and like if it's raining, high precipitation. They can close up their shell and keep moist enough and alive, at least 45 days out of water. And this is just what we've seen. We don't know what they are really capable of doing. But when it's hot, like most of California in the summertime, it's pretty hot. They usually only last about 5 days when it's really dry and hot outside, especially if they're exposed to sun. So this is one of the methods we've used to help desiccate and kill mussels, and making sure our gear is not harboring anything living. Now I'm going to move to the chart on the right side where the QZGM biology. I'm not going to go through all of this too much in detail. This will be here for you'll have a recording of this presentation, so you can get into the nitty gritty, nerdy scientific stuff later if you'd like. But what I want to focus on primarily is like the calcium levels. This is, and why I want you all to understand this is because a lot of people are like, well, how come a lot of the higher Sierra reservoirs and lakes didn't have any prevention program or boat inspection at the lakes when, during the quagga and zebra mussel realm? And that's because quagga and zebra mussels, they don't need as much they need more calcium to develop their shells, just like our nails and our bones. They need at least, if you look, 10 to 25 milligrams per liter of calcium in that water to be able to survive in that place. And most of the High Sierra reservoirs and lakes didn't have that amount of calcium. So it wasn't a suitable habitat for them. Thus, those agencies didn't put monies and effort toward a inspection program. However, golden mussels, unfortunately, that's not the case. They don't need a lot of calcium to develop their shells. It can be as low as 1 milligram per liter to, more, at least 3 to 5 is their preferred. I mentioned earlier, and I've noticed their shells are a lot thinner. So they don't need that amount of calcium, which means they're really able to survive in most fresh waters in North America. Again, another reason why we have to really be vigilant and step up our game in how we prevent the spread of them. Obviously, salinity and temperature are going to play a role. The one thing that's kind of a different thing, that they're mostly on steroids compared to dry seeded mussels, but golden mussels do need a little bit of warmer water to actually spawn. So that's our one advantage of combating them if we've got colder waters. But that's a whole other story right there. There's some other parameters there. A couple of things, the origins of quagga and zebra mussels are the Caspian Sea area, particularly the Dnieper River in the Ukraine. And some of these areas are close to estuarian environments. So like the quagga mussels can actually handle a little more salinity than zebra mussels can. So if you think of the Delta, quagga mussels could probably survive. I actually did a study. They can survive up to 2 days potentially in almost full marine water. Most of them die within 4 to 5 hours, but there are the rare hardy ones. And this was a study I've done, and this was just a lab. This isn't even really considering an actual real life environment. They can survive in salt water for a couple days. So that means there's a boat could potentially, boat out of Antioch, go to San Francisco and back, and potentially still carry living quagga mussels. And golden mussels can handle even more salt, more salinity. So these are some things that we need to consider, because especially of, being California and coastal, we have a lot of boaters that go from our estuaries up into freshwater sources, mostly, primarily the San Joaquin, Sacramento Delta. So moving right along, here's the impacts. Being of the most injurious species, these 3 mussels cause ecological, economical, and cultural impacts. Let's start with the ecological one. And you can see, we'll start with the left photos. The photo that you see of the hand holding a mussel, basically that big mussel underneath, is a native winged floater species. And those are zebra mussels crowding all over it, preventing it from opening up and basically starving it out and out competing it. This is a huge problem with native species. People have asked, I'm just going to kind of answer this right now because this was a question earlier. Like the use of biocontrol. Have we used biocontrol for mussels? Well, they have used red-eared sunfish in areas down south to eat the mussels, because do things eat the mussels? Yes, they do. But here's a problem. These mussels are filter feeders. They will filter feed over 100 liters of water a day. So basically, they are bioaccumulating all of the toxins that are in that water as well. So a couple of things happen. Basically, they will clear up the water. A lot of people have noticed, and we're already noticing this in the Delta, and I've got some photos to show you later. They basically filter feed so much out of the water, even to the point where they, clear themselves out of house and home. So we've even noticed in the Great Lakes area where they filter fed so much because there was such a population boom, they fed the water column so clear that nothing could survive. Because keep in mind, a lot of that filtering is the nutrients. And other things need those nutrients, young fish, insects, larvae, and other beneficial bacteria. When these mussels filter feed everything away, they're also, unfortunately, we have a lot of toxins in our environment. They're accumulating so many toxins that their tissues are 100,000 times more toxic than their surrounding environment. So when something does go and eat them, they basically die of botulism. And we've seen this in the Great Lakes area. We've seen this in some studies where they've tried to make a lake down in LA go anoxic, taking all the oxygen out. So everything died as a way to kill the mussels off. But then they floated to the top. Birds were eating them. They died after eating them. Fish will try to eat them, also dying from the toxins. Obviously, we don't want to eat them either. People always ask, should we get some cioppino out? No, you don't want to get any cioppino out with these particular mussels. So that's it's this one of the many stories. You can see on the bottom photo there too, that's a crawfish, and mussels will attach to things like crawfish. That crawfish isn't going to do very well with mussels all over it. It eventually died. They also cause, when they do filter feed a column away out of the water column, what ends up happening is that plant life, because there's more light that can penetrate deeper, the plants that are there will have a plant boom. And then the plant boom will choke out. We already have, plant problems in places like the Delta as it is, and some other locations, like the Keys and Lake Tahoe and other places with aquatic invasive weeds. These weeds boom, and then they will absorb all the oxygen out of the water, and then nothing can survive. And what you're seeing on that upper right picture, where it's all like that lime neon green, and that woman on the beach, which, by the way, you don't want to be anywhere near a toxic bloom like that. It's a neurotoxin, and it will, and unfortunately, we're seeing more of this right now, not only just with, climate change, but also because of the invasive species that are present that are aiding in the boom of these harmful algal blooms. And you don't want to touch it. It'll make you sick. I can share several stories about what it can do to humans, but I can tell you right now, every year I'm hearing dogs dying because they are swimming in water that has algal blooms. And then basically there's nothing could be done. Once these toxins get into our nervous system through our bloodstream, it'll attack the brain. And then basically, we're seeing this even along our coastlines with red tide. But when you see this, don't swim in it, and don't let your dog swim in it. And then, ecologically, you can see infrastructures impacted. We're already seeing, like, for example, in Southern California, people have, since the quagga mussel invasion starting from 2007 on, their infrastructure got clogged up, and basically everyone's utility bills went up because of the extra chlorination or extra cleaning, extra staffing to deal with the clogging and fouling of infrastructure. And I've got some other photos about what the golden mussels are doing in the Delta right now. Not only do utility prices go up, but so does produce. And we've seen this in Arkansas, and we're going to start seeing it here in California now, because they're starting to clog our agricultural infrastructure as well. And then a lot of times, places close, like that bottom right corner there, that photo is, San Justo Reservoir. That's the only zebra mussel infested reservoir in California that's near Hollister. And that one's been closed due to the zebra mussel infestation. And it's still closed to this day. And it has disgruntled a lot of local people that used to use that reservoir. I'm not going to talk about why there are infested places that are still open. That's another discussion for later. But I want to share this map with you. Basically, there are 45 locations in California with quagga mussels, and all of them are in Southern California. Basically, Lake Mead got infested with quagga mussels in 2007 is when they noticed them. And because Southern California gets water from the Colorado River aqueduct. It was just a matter of months before they started showing up in San Diego and LA counties. And they have spread a little bit outside of the Colorado River water sources due to recreation. But they've been contained to the southern portions of California. That small red circle in the middle there of California, that one is that one zebra mussel infested reservoir that I was telling you about, San Justo Reservoir. I don't know, quick story. I think the manager of that reservoir had a friend from back east, where back east had been infested, which I have a map to show you in a minute. They've been infested since the 80s back east. The Great Lakes got infested with quagga and zebra mussels in the 80s. And they tried to contain it over there, but eventually it spread across the whole state. I mean, the whole nation. There's only a few states that don't have any mussels, and it's very few now. And I'll show you a map where you can see where these different infestations are or aren't. The gold markings that you see, that's where the golden mussels are located. So basically, as you've heard Jonathan mention, they were detected in October of 2024, so a little over a year now. And because so much of the state south of us receives Delta water, that has infested all the recipients of Delta water all the way to San Diego now. This map right here shows you all the locations, and you have access to this map. I'm going to show you some links. They'll be also in the write-ups that you have been given by Vivian, how to access these links. You can see where all the infestations of golden mussels are. This map right here, all those blue dots are showing all the various locations that agencies and local people are monitoring for golden mussels and not finding them. So there's lots of efforts, and people, not just agencies, but even just the local citizen can be a part of helping look for and trying to identify and look for golden mussels. Again, I will show you, there's a map that you can access. In fact, the map, if you, I'll just say this right now. Even if, say you lose your link to this presentation, just know if you go to CDFW's website, California Department of Fish and Wildlife's website, and in the search engine, just put golden mussel or quagga mussel or nutria or whatever else you want to look up. But if you put golden mussel, it'll take you to the golden mussel link. There's all these links, including a map. And when you see the map, it'll show you where all the infestations are located within the state. And there is a report link on the bottom of that map that you just follow it. It's very simple, basic. If you see something that looks like a golden mussel to you, and keep in mind, golden mussels, they don't get more than about 1.5 inches. They don't get super big. They're not like, the mussels you see that you eat or that you see at the tide pools along our coastlines.
And Catherine, I included in the chat, and people will receive it also in the follow-up email.
Super. So just know that that's there, and that's a way you can help the efforts. Now, you've seen this, the presentations before with Jonathan and Caesar. They had mentioned, this is just what we do know of. There's probably more boats that we know, and this was just for the year of 2024. These are all the vessels that were known to have left the Delta to other locations as far away as Alaska. So boats are transporting all over the place. And we don't know of any golden mussel infestations anywhere else outside of California at this point. Hopefully it'll stay that way. But the threat is constantly there. And Lake Berryessa, I got pretty alarmed because actually that count of 831 boats going to their lake in that year, they actually realized that's not counting all of them. It was more like 2,000. So that's why a lot of agencies have really beefed up their prevention and inspection programs. Now, I want to share some photos with you. The first video here, what you're looking at is me and my colleague. This was December of 2024. We had just learned about the invasion of golden mussels. This is the port of Stockton. This is ground zero. This is a mooring line that was hanging in the hanging off the dock, the pier there, and those are the golden mussels. You can see that some of them are definitely very golden colored. They're not super big, but some of them can be a darker color, and they definitely like rope, but you're seeing them all over now. They don't like sunny areas, so if an area is really sunny and at high tide, you're not going to really see them. They like to be in shadier, hidden places underneath things. So that's why we will put things, what we call like quagga condos or substrates. We'll hang them down and monitor stuff that way, because it's kind of hard to reach under all docks to see if they're there. Now, I wanted to share some other impacts of infrastructure. This is in the Delta. You can see basically that infrastructure there is some of Department of Water Resources infrastructure that they have to check. It used to be maybe like once a year they would have to clean that grate. Now they have to clean that grate monthly, even a little more often than that, by the amount of growth of golden mussels that are there now. And the photo that you see on the right side, the blue thing, they used to, prior to October of 2024, they weren't seeing any attachments to anything. They weren't seeing mussels anywhere. But now that picture on the right, that's that same photo. It's that same structure with the mussels all over it now. And that happened just 6 months after they first found mussels at the port of Stockton. So this is the issues that we're dealing with and the impacts and the rate at the impacts go. This is a vessel that was, this is Delta Marine in Stockton. It's basically right under I-5 right there. This guy that's one of his jobs is now scraping golden mussels off of vessels that are coming in from the various marinas in the Delta. And doesn't smell too well. And some other things that we're noticing, all kinds of infrastructures just getting coated. And that dock, this is the marina at Delta Marine. And if you notice, the end of the dock is kind of bowing down. That is from the weight of the mussels. So this fender that you see on the left side, that fender was about 2 feet long, and it probably weighed about 85 pounds just with those mussels on it. So there's just a lot of infrastructural damage that these mussels are doing. You can't really see, this photo doesn't have an angle of the light, but in this location for decades, in fact, the people that work at the Delta Marine and the area right here, they were, and I can speak as well on this. You used to not be able to see the bottom along the shoreline. If you go along the shoreline in this area now, you can start to see, rocks and, you can see the bottom of the edges of the Delta now, which prior to that you weren't able to. So the mussels are definitely filter feeding a lot of that nutrients. And why is this a problem? You've heard it discussed earlier with Caesar and Jonathan, is they filter feed everything away. So they're basically causing a food chain collapse because they're filter feeding the small stuff off, so the small fish don't have anything to eat, and so they die. And then once the older fish either die of old age or get caught, there's nothing to replace them, and it's just part of an ecological collapse. So, you've heard, this is just reiterating what you've already heard from the previous two, but it's important to know, I mean, there's all kinds of things out there. And, people will argue, well, golden mussels can't survive here. Well, whether they can or can't, it doesn't matter. If it's not one thing, it's something else. So the bottom line is we need to clean, drain, and dry everything. We don't want to let anything loose. If you have a pet that you don't want, or there's bait that you don't want, don't dump it into a waterway. There's ways to dispose of it properly, which was spoken before by Jonathan or Caesar. You can take pets to a pet shop. Now, I can tell you, PetSmart and Petco won't take unwanted pets. It's usually more like the local ones do. But they do have information oftentimes of where you can take them if they won't take them. And then there's humane ways of euthanizing things too. Hello? Do you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you. Somebody was unmuted, so I just muted that person.
Thank you. So there's so many things that we can do, as a citizen of the planet. We have these programs, citizen science programs. You can go to this link, which you don't have to, you'll get this link provided by Vivian to know, but you can report things either through our website. Division of Boating Waterways has lots of information. They have a whole mussel kit. They have a whole aquatic invasive species kit that includes educational material, handouts, lots of informative videos that you can use for yourself and share with your organizations, with your schools, with any kind of community that you're a part of. There's also apps you can get on your phone. EDD Maps is one of them. These I like because they will have photos. There's some other ones. There was one called Aquatic Invaders, but I think they stopped. But having these apps on your phone, like say you're out on a hike or you're out boating or whatever, and you see something that looks suspicious that maybe you haven't noticed before, you can use your app, your smartphones to try to identify these things and log them so that you can report them. And by the way, I'll just say this, say you're out there and you see something, you want to report it, please do two things. One, take a photo of it and have something to scale, like put your foot or put a coin or something so that we can get a concept of size. Because, for example, New Zealand mud snails, they're teeny itsy bitsy, but we have a native snail called a juga. They look almost identical, but our native one is much larger than a New Zealand mud snail. And people have sent me photos of a juga saying, I've seen mud snails, and I didn't have any way of determining the size. So I had to drive all the way out there. If they had like a coin next to it or something, I could have determined whether it was a juga or New Zealand mud snail. So photos help with scale. And then secondly, get your coordinates, your GPS. All of our cell phones have a GPS locator on our maps. And that will help us go and investigate further. And then I'm going to say it again, because we're all saying it and we can never say it enough. The clean, drain, and dry, it's like, I always say, it's add this onto your stop, drop, and roll message that you learned as a kid. So now it's stop, drop, and roll, clean, drain, and dry. Everything that you have, everything that you do, clean, drain, or dry it. And, there are so many vectors that can spread things, not just boats. We've got lots of seaplanes. There's a lot of seaplane pilots that do what they call pedal jumping. They'll fly from one lake to the next across the country, even into Canada and Mexico, and they will carry their floats. All floats of seaplane will take on water, and I've done a study, they can transport either aquatic invasive weeds or organisms in that water that they have to pump out when they're taking off at the next location, so they're light enough to get off the water. There's ways to mitigate this. There's ways to knock off vegetation on your floats. There's ways to, whether you're in a boat or a seaplane or a kayak or even your mountain bike, there's ways to make sure you cannot transport something from one location to another. And it could be just seeds, even terrestrial stuff, from what seeds stuck to your bumper of your car, and then you go camp in a different place in a different state the next day. Make sure not, clean things off of everywhere you go, like check your suitcases before you return home from Hawaii or in Indonesia or wherever you're going. I had a coqui frog jump in my suitcase when I was on the Big Island a couple of years ago. I've had a lizard get into my suitcase once. Make sure that you check everything before you leave a location, because we're the primary vector of all these invasives. Cleaning, another thing too, one will ask, well, you're a seaplane pilot, you land on Lake Tahoe, you need to get the water out so you can get enough, if you're light enough to get off the lake to fly to your next place, but you have to pump out that water. Well, what I've learned is a lot of seaplane pilots, for example, they carry vinegar, because vinegar, they'll get the water spots off their floats and their plane so they don't have drag. And a lot of boaters know this and do the same thing. Vinegar is a easy way to just have some in your seaplane or your boat to get some areas that if you don't have access to hot water, which I'm going to have a video to explain this, but just clean any way you can clean, even if it's just a cold water hose, any cleaning is better than nothing. So now what? What are we going to do? What can I do as just a citizen of this planet? There's lots of things we can do. Just be vigilant and, clean our stuff off before we go to the next place. But there's, look for professional help. There are a lot of decontamination stations now that, and we're only growing more and more. For the example, people are saying, well, how are we dealing with all these vessels coming out of the Delta? We're still working on that one. It's hard. Things are expensive. The global climate is weird right now. But one of the big goals is dip tanks, so that vessels can kind of basically back up their boat into a pool that's full of hot water. And we fervently promote using hot water. Hot water pretty much kills most anything. So, using bleach, people hear, oh, just bleach it. No, you don't want to bleach it, because one, it's hard on your equipment. It's hard on the environment. It can nullify some of your warranties on your equipment. And it's not needed, because really hot water is the best way to go about it. You've heard that we have canines that can help. If something is really intricate, like a boat, we're never going to see all the nooks and crannies of a boat. And boats always will have water in it. There's no way to dry a boat completely. And this is why we have things like dogs to help us out with this. I want to
In this
share
section, we're going to
this video
discuss
with
vessel and gear inspection and decontamination. Assume that wherever you go, whether it's local or abroad, you're likely going to be carrying something back with you on your gear. You will want a scrub brush, a pick to pry out areas such as pebbles and mud in your boot treads, and a thermometer to make sure you have the water hot enough to kill organisms. The smaller the organism, the faster they die. For tougher gear, use hot water at 140 degrees. For sensitive gear, such as scuba equipment and data sondes and other such equipment with sensitive probes, use warm air temperature water. If all you have is a cold hose, then use it. It's better than nothing. Have a gear box. It's an easy way to store gear as well as to submerge it in hot water that can be heated with the portable tea kettle. For things like waders, neoprene, scuba gear, use 100-degree water. As a rule of thumb, for sensitive gear, use water as hot as your hand can handle. This can also be done at home in the bathtub. If you are concerned about melting your gear, contact the manufacturer for verification. This is an example of my field gear decontamination setup. This can apply to field scientists, contractors, as well as the recreationist. The photo on the right is my work truck in which I fashioned a hanging rack system with the use of 2 telescoping boat hooks. This is where I hang waders, nets, lines, and other gear. Because this is work-related, I have designated gear that is only used at one water body. But should I have to use the same gear in a different water body on the same day, it's imperative to make sure to kill anything hitchhiking on the equipment. When at all possible, use hot water. The use of chemicals in some cases, such as medical or specific scientific applications, are required, but for general purposes, hot water will do. Chemicals are harmful to us, our gear, and the environment. Vinegar is also a less harmful and less toxic replacement in some cases. The 12-volt tea kettle is how I heat the water. The portable pressure washer with 3 power sources is how I hose down gear, and the portable steamer is how I decon difficult-to-reach places on gear that can handle such heat, such as felt-bottom wader boots, boot treads, and areas of boats that are difficult to reach. All of these items are relatively inexpensive and can be found on Amazon, Walmart, and other locations. The portable pressure washer stores easy in any vehicle, has a long-lasting internal rechargeable battery, but can also be run off a 12-volt or an external battery source like a Jackery. The pressure washer generally knocks most things off, but for more stubborn areas, use a brush. We were just in a golden mussel-infested location, so we followed it up with a vinegar spray that we let sit for 10 minutes, and then rinsed later, and also allowed the gear to dry out for several days. Sometimes freezing gear overnight is an option, but this isn't always available for everyone, and it doesn't always kill everything, such as funguses. Clean footwear last, making sure to thoroughly clear the tread and lacing. This is where soaking or steaming comes in handy. For smaller vessels, create a system to clean everything off before you leave that location. In this scenario, I use my truck as a mounting station. I clean the back end first and the middle, making sure to get all the nooks and crannies. You'll be surprised where you can find small organisms. Then I load the boat and clear off the nose part that was touching the ground. Then I clean off the back of the truck, and then I close up and leave. I will make sure the vessel is also dry before I use it anywhere else. This location has a cleaning station next to the launch area. It includes a rack, a hose, and a brush that's attached to a cable. It is encouraged for all recreational boating areas to have a cleaning station. When you think you cleaned the boat well off in the water, it's very difficult to get all the small stuff. In this case, I counted 19 little snails, some of which were the very invasive New Zealand mud snail, on this paddleboard after pulling it out of the lake. After cleaning, find a good place to set the vessel to dry. Use a towel if you can't wait for the sun to dry it. If there are no cleaning stations available, another relatively easy option is to get a set of portable sawhorses. They are multi-use, inexpensive, and portable. For larger vessels, make sure to clear anything off stuck to the boat, trailer, anchor, lines, and anywhere else in the vessel. Remember to pull the plug and dry out even the bilge area prior to launching it at any different water body. For a more in-depth training on inspection and decontamination, contact the Pacific States Marine Fisheries Commission. They offer this training for free. The link will be provided in the follow-up.
So there's lots of YouTube information out there too, different lakes. If you want to know what program is going on at the lake that you are going to visit, we recommend that you contact their local hotline, go to their internet and resources, because they may have different ways of if you have to sign up, some of their methods in which they go about the inspection process is different. So you just want to contact them to get their local information. Now, these are some of the links that I wanted to talk about that you definitely want to have. Again, Vivian will provide these for you, but the Invasives link on our website, the CDFW website, there's lots of information regarding all types of invasives, even terrestrial ones. Just, you can just click invasive and you'll see the list, or if you can go specifically to a species you want to learn, There's also the Western AIS. This is where you can get inspector decon training. If you're an agency within California, our department is now going to be we call it the WID training. WID stands for Watercraft Inspection and Decontamination Training. So for those of you that are a agency, contact us and let us know if you need one of these trainings for your facility. And this, if you just contact CDFW hotline, you'll see, and then actually just contact me and I can direct you. If you're in a region outside of mine, I will direct you to the region that you need to contact. And then the other one I like, definitely burn this other one in your memory, the nis.erusgs.gov. So that map, if you go to that website, NAS stands for non-native aquatic species. What's nice about this link is that, one, it's nationwide. You can also set up email alert systems. So if you want to know, okay, I want to know any new aquatic invasive species that's entered California, it'll give you an email alert. Or maybe you live here and in, Idaho, and you want to know what's going on in Idaho as well. You can have it set up for, the whole country or just specific states. And you can have it even set up like if you only want to know terrestrial stuff or only aquatic stuff, or both, you can set up your alerts that way. And it's updated pretty regularly, and it's nationwide. So say you're an agency and you get a boat coming in, or somebody, say you're a private lake and you want to know, these people that came from Kansas and they had their kayaks in this lake in Kansas, you can go on this website and find out if that Kansas lake was something to worry about and had invasives. So anyway, I wanted to thank you all. I've covered a lot here. I'm sure there's a lot that I haven't covered. In fact, I know there's a lot I haven't covered, but there's only so much you can fit in an hour, and only so much our brains can absorb at once. But just know it takes a village. So spread the message and not the muscle. And I am open for questions.
Thank you, Catherine. And if you want to stop sharing your screen. So a couple of things and reminders for all of you. All the resources that have been mentioned in these presentations are included in the link that I included already in the chat, which was part of the agenda and the other handout. Everything has been placed there for you. So it's easy for you to have access to all of that, including reporting phone numbers, among others. And in the follow-up email that you will receive later on, I'll include other resources, including the mussels map that you can see that Catherine showed about where the different water bodies have been impacted. In addition to that, we'll share with you where the inspections are happening across the state in terms of quagga and golden and zebra mussels. So you have that information there. And also to refresh everybody, the last portion was about freshwater organisms. We covered in this morning the salt water, because sometimes people still are confused. Golden, quagga, and zebra mussels are mainly in the freshwater. Some of them are crossing the boundary with brackish water, but again, they are mainly freshwater. So we are ready to open it up for questions. And before that, I'm going to include in the chat the evaluation form, and I hope everybody can help us just 1 minute of your time filling those out. And this afternoon, once the recording is available, I'll share it again with the group in a second follow-up email. Any questions for Catherine and Jonathan? And I saw that the question that we have for Jonathan was already responded, but I want to open it up for all of you to ask questions about quagga, golden, and zebra mussels. So let me see. I don't see any hands out. Okay, Diana, go ahead, please, and unmute yourself.
Yes, I was just wondering, I heard chlorine mentioned a couple of times for cleaning, and I'm just wondering what types of environment it's safe to use chlorine in. And also, I had learned a little bit about ozone, that it's used to clean out the public water systems in some areas, and like water, like purifying water during COVID. And I'm just wondering if ozone is something that can be used in the areas where some of these invasive species are as a safe intervention.
Well, for starters, if you're just the recreationist, as I mentioned, you want to use hot water. Chlorine was something that they used in the beginning, but have eventually determined that what it does is it leaves residual um, um, pollutants in it. It will cause, like for water agencies, they find that it will have residual effect that affect drinking water. So it's not a good use anymore. And there are lots of scientists putting their heads together right now as we speak, trying to come up with new innovative ways of dealing with decontaminating infrastructure. There's a couple of them. For example, UV light is one of the considerations. However, it only is effective in non-turbulent water, which is not always the case. So that's not going to be able to apply to everything. Ozone, I'm not familiar with. I've heard it mentioned, but I don't know that anything is going forward on that study. The other, I know at the higher levels, like in DC, they're talking about sonic approaches to dealing with biofouling. And there are already there are boaters already using this, but I do want to caution that some of these things, they're not regulated yet, and they could be harmful. They can be harmful. I mean, like, for example, there's these pucks that you can buy on Amazon and attach them to the hull of your boat, but it will emit a sonic frequency that will make the mussels release. However, it's not really killing the mussels, and it'll also have a warning that don't swim in the vicinity within 20, I don't know, within the vicinity of this boat, because it will kill you. So what's happening is, obviously it's a dangerous, unregulated thing that we don't want people to just go out and buy these things. It needs to be studied more, and it needs to be done in a controlled setting. So this golden mussel issues really pushed humanity. I think it's going to be kind of a pivotal point in us really considering the technologies that we're using, because are they still thinking to apply chemicals? Yes. Is that really the way we should go? I'm not going to answer on that one. I think that there are better technologies that don't have the negative effects, the negative impacts after use. I'll kind of respond to a question earlier regarding biocontrol. Using biocontrol, I've never come across a study, an application that didn't have some kind of negative effect. There's a product called Zequinox that is a bacterium that in its dried powdered form, and it exists in soils and in water naturally. However, there was a company called Bio Organic Innovations by Pam Marone and some other folks. They applied this Zequinox product into where it was effective was in closed systems. Like, they used a quarry in New York, and it was, that water was contained. It wasn't going anywhere. So it didn't really affect anything outside of that quarry. It had zebra mussels, I think, in that. This was, back in about 15 years ago or so. But I do know that they've applied it in some other locations. It didn't fully kill everything off because, unfortunately, California, it's an open water system. No other state moves water around like California, and you can't contain it. And I know from scientists that studied 2 weeks after the application in some areas of the Great Lakes that there was a salmonid die-off. So again, with biocontrol, I've never heard of any application that didn't have some kind of negative effects afterwards. So bottom line, if we can, and I'm just going to plant this seed, we need to, there's clean technologies, more advanced technologies that exist that we really need to put our focus on, and such as sonic. So I hope that answers your question. I could probably go on a little more, but yeah.
And I want just to emphasize to everybody to please listen what Catherine is saying. The fact that he's mentioning chlorine, that doesn't mean that you are allowed to use it when you are in any waterway. That's fully illegal. Nothing that doesn't belong to the water should be discharged into our waterways. Chlorine is extremely aggressive. I always tell people, I'm amazed when people use them even at home. Please respect your lungs, respect your skin, your eyes, because chlorine is extremely aggressive. So please make sure you're hearing what she's saying, because sometimes people get like, oh, they mentioned chlorine and that's the message that they go, and that's not okay. So please make sure that you're clear about that. Diana, go ahead and ask the following question while others are thinking about any other questions that we can ask the experts. Go ahead, please.
Okay, my other concern was like our options for cleaning off like equipment and stuff, like bathtub was mentioned. So that's going to go into the local sewer system. Now, the small, how microscopic a lot of these organisms are, by doing that, is that going to get into our pipeways, into the city water infrastructure that's floating underground? I live in Santa Monica. We have runoff that goes off in a couple of places, like right into our bay, especially when there's rainstorms. But some stuff just seems to mysteriously get leaked in through it. So I'm just concerned about those, using that as a way for cleaning off, going into.
Yeah, there's two separate things that you're talking about. You're talking about water that goes to a treatment plant, and then you're talking about water that will go to a natural waterway. So with regards to anything that you do where you clean off something that's going to end up, going down your sink or any city utility, it's going to go to water treatment. One, you're killing, the whole point is to kill what's on your equipment before it's going to get flushed down your drain. But then you also have the added help that it's going to be treated at a water treatment plant, because they have to go through treatment process before it goes either to community, back out to communities, or into a natural water system. So just make sure you're killing first of all, you want to clean off any visible chunks of things and dispose of them into your garbage can that goes to a dump site, not out, to where it could rain and flow back into a stream again. You want to make sure any effluent of any kind goes to a community utility treatment center. And then with regards to stuff that goes to down a drain, the gutter, and out to a stream, I'm just going to bring up a scenario. There was a gentleman that pulled his pontoon boat out of the Delta and took it home, and had his brother-in-law help him clean it on the side of the street. And so all these mussels just got scraped off, and then eventually went down the drain. And this is an issue when you don't want to just take your equipment and clean it on your driveway or in an area where it can flow back into a natural waterway. You need to take it to one of two places. Have it professionally decontaminated, or professionally pressure washed and cleaned by people that have been trained in it. You don't want to just take it to anybody, because there's training you need to go through to understand idiosyncrasies of boat anatomy or whatever you're washing, and the trained eye of knowing what to look for. I don't know how many people say, oh yeah, I pressure washed my boat, and I'll look at it and there's still mussels all over the place. So you want somebody that knows what they're looking at and what to do. But also don't just clean anything off. We still tell this to people: don't wash your car in your driveway and let all that, brake dust and whatever oil coming off your car flowing right into the drain that goes out to the creek or bay. you want to do these at an area that stuff gets filtered first. Taking your equipment to a car wash that has a filtration system is another option when you've got larger stuff like that. Does that answer your question, Diana?
Thank you.
Yeah. And hot water, again, you don't need chemicals. We don't need chemicals for anything. Hot water pretty much will do the trick. And if you don't have access to hot water and you don't have access or know where professional places you can go, then wash it off and then let it dry. And, if it's a nice hot sunny day and everything dries out and desiccates, that's going to kill anything aquatic. And, yeah, those are your options.
Thank you, Catherine. We had another question from Isaac about grant opportunities for hot water pressure sprayer systems for washing stations, and I include the response, Isaac, in the chat about what the Division of Boating and Waterways projects and resources are included there. So, for example, the Tier 2 implementation includes projects that request money for decontamination processes and units. So I included for all of you, so you can see that information right there in the chat. And that information will be also included in the follow-up email, so you have everything in one for easy reference. Any other questions for Catherine? Again, reminding everybody, the mussels we talk are freshwater organisms. This morning we covered saltwater organisms. And want just to give a few more minutes to all of you to ask any questions to our panel of experts before we wrap it up. In the meantime, if you are still thinking, I'm including in the chat for all of you, please to take 2 minutes of your time to fill out our evaluation form. I would really appreciate if you do that. This is a work in progress, and we try every year to tune up the workshops, get more information based on your feedback. And I'm just checking here the chat. Go ahead, Catherine.
Yeah, there's a couple questions here. There's one about template signages.
Yeah, I included all the responses already there.
Okay.
For Vita and Isaac, I included the toolkit that we have for different agencies where you see posters and resources that you can order. Any questions you can let us know directly. So I went and I checked all the questions here. I'm just checking here all the cameras to see if I have any hands up, but I don't see anybody, any questions. Probably people are ready to increase energy with a fantastic lunch. Any questions? Anybody, please let us know. Follow-up emails or wrap it up would be, please take your time before you leave your computer and enjoy a fantastic lunch. 2 minutes of your time evaluation form. I'll send you in a few minutes the follow-up email with several of the resources and questions you have. I took the notes and I include that in the follow-up email. You will have also access to the handout that I sent you before the workshop today in the chat where the agenda was found. So you have pretty much all the resources we mentioned and much more in that follow-up email. And later on, I'll send you the recording once it's uploaded into our YouTube channel. And of course, in the email, you will find the contact of all of us in case you have any specific information or question for any of the experts that we brought to all of you today. I don't see more questions, and I want to make sure that everybody has the rest of the afternoon for your productive work. It's 12:04. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Excellent questions, resources. Share the word with others and have a fantastic afternoon. You can just close your system, and I will ask Catherine, Cesar, and also Jonathan to please stay here. I'm going to stop the recording at this point. For the rest of you, please have a fantastic